And we are live. Hey, Sarah, how are you?
Hi, I am grand.
So nice to have you on. Really, really nice. And we were just talking. It's the eve of the Sotheby's auction and sale. So very
Yes,
exciting.
it is very exciting. I'm so honored to be a part of it alongside so many other incredible artists from this space. And it's just very, as someone who was sort of a fine artist first, like Matt Kane and I were talking about this the other day, how it's really exciting to be at this point where we're kind of like re-entering the fine art space. Like it's finally sort of ready and opening up to us with this sort of esoteric thing we've been doing now for a few years. It's really exciting to have this moment. It feels very monumental, personally
Absolutely.
and really for the space.
Absolutely. And actually, to kind of like go back to the very beginning,
Mhm.
and I'd like to start from there. So, how did all of this kind of start for you? Like, how did you discover crypto art?
Sure. Well, I crypto art, I keep saying my like involvement in it was sort of this obligatory moment, which is it's actually a term from like screenwriting and playwriting. Like the idea that if you see a gun in scene one, you know that gun's gonna go off at some point during the play. It's called Chekhov's gun. So that's kind of like crypto art for me. Because I found out about it. I found out about the potential for NFTs in 2014 when Kevin McCoy did his experiment minting the first NFT, which is actually part of the Sotheby's natively digital sale that my work is in. They're auctioning that work that is considered the first NFT ever. That was done through Rhizome, this media arts organization in New York, and I've always been very attuned to what they've been up to. So I knew about it in 2014, 2015. It was like super on my radar. I even was thinking about that this week that when I was working with my former collaborative studio, which was funny enough called The Currency, we did an interview with the Creators Project called The Future of Gifts as Gallery Art, because we were really, making moves as GIF artists at that time. And I was also curating a show of GIF art here in Los Angeles called Prism Pipe. And so we did this interview where I talked about that. I was like really excited about, blockchain is going to make it possible for us to edition screen-based artwork in the same way a photographer could make a print. And that's going to change everything, right? At that time, as someone doing screen-based art, the only way to really monetize that was to take commissions or create branded content, which is not the same as getting to make your vision happen and then develop a collector base for it. So that's kind of what laid the groundwork for me. And I just kept my eyes and ears open for a few years. And it was actually an artist that I had shown at my showcase, Prism Pipe, Yura Marone, who I had been following all those years. And he started posting, hey, my work's for sale on Super Rare. And I was like, aha, like this is it. I think someone figured out how to do this thing that was always like theoretical in those earlier days. And I checked out Super Rare and I was like, this is the thing. This is what I've been waiting for and I've been preparing for, really, as someone who has always kind of had this fine art approach to creating GIF and new media. So, I minted my first token on Super Rare on April 4th, 2019. I sort of recently celebrated my 2-year anniversary, and I've just been building my body of work on the blockchain ever since.
And that's actually super cool. I didn't know that backstory, but I guess from kind of like from that moment when that first, let's say, mint and tokenization like happened. How was that journey? Like, it's been 2 years,
Mm-hmm.
so it's, well, in crypto time it's like a century basically.
Yeah.
So I'm sure you've seen a lot of the space evolve. What I guess are some like key kind of moments for you that have happened throughout these 2 years?
Yeah, it's funny. I've been sharing about this a lot lately because I've been seeing people, be very reactive to the sort of ebb and flow, the natural ebb and flow of the NFT space and of the market. And, like you said, 2 years is like not that long in the grand scheme of my life, but in this space, that is an eternity. And I have been through so many of these cycles at this point. So, I believe really in like radical transparency to a certain degree. That's part of what excites me about the blockchain, right? It's like everyone can see when something was created, what it sold for, who it sold to. So there's kind of this degree of like, it keeps us all honest in a way, or it should, of like, and I sort of lean into sharing my journey, sharing even these moments that are, maybe not positive or like maybe not, sharing things in the effort of the fact that I care so much about art and about artists. Like I'm an artist first and a crypto person second. And it's, I don't know, maybe just that I have a little bit, I'm like a nurturer a little bit, that I like want to nurture other artists in orienting themselves and feeling good about what they're doing here. So I say that all to say that, I started minting in 2019 and I had early collectors right off the bat, like Coldy was one of my earliest collectors. And, but back then a lot of the collectors in the space were also artists, I joke that it's like, we were like Fraggles, all kind of like exchanging a pebble with each other. Like I would get $75 and then I'd spend that money on somebody else's piece and then they'd spend that on someone else's piece. Like it was kind of like the same money, just changing hands between us all in those early days. But again, like I said, I had for years been sort of pontificating on the ways in which this technology could completely revolutionize how we develop collector bases for digital and new media art. So I believed in it and it excited me. And I really liked just experimenting with it and playing with it and watching it grow. And it was growing very gradually in 2019. And, it was really around the end of 2019, we started to see some more bombastic sales, like new people were coming in and they were suddenly selling work for a lot more money. And that was kind of my indication of like, something is shifting here, right? And a lot of the people who've kind of been doing this along the same timeline as I have, I'm sure experienced the same thing where when new people would come in and then suddenly sell their work for these huge amounts of money, they were setting an average that was already so high that then you'd look at someone like me from the earlier days and go, oh, well, her work doesn't sell for very much. And it's like, well, no one's work was selling for very much in the beginning. It was actually an indicator of when someone entered the space, for a time there. And it was then really in like around early 2020 that it was Jason Bailey, who goes by Art Gnome, who runs a fantastic blog, is an excellent writer and one of our great thinkers in this space, that he made a big resale from his collection. And he bought like several of my pieces. And I'm always telling people like cherish that person and be that person. I try to do for others what he did for me, which is not just that he bought the work, but that he really sort of like, he helped contextualize my work for people. He is someone with a great grasp of art and what we're doing here fits into the greater context of fine art and of art collecting. He kind of said to everyone like, hey, like this person's been here. She's making this incredible work that has this, her practice extends beyond just her first moment in crypto art. And this is insane to me that people have not been just gobbling this up. So of course, in doing that, it's like I sold everything I had in like a day. Like, and really from that point on, it was that one thing, that one moment of Jason kind of like saying to everyone, hey, you should take a look at what she's doing. The interest in my work has really been there ever since and really kept growing and growing through 2020. And and then Super Rare has really always been the center, my central platform, but I'm also very much platform agnostic and very interested in the new platforms entering the space, seeing how they fit in. I really think with the number of artists we have here, we all benefit from new platforms and from having more spaces. I always say Super Rare is fantastic. They can't be everything to everyone. And I think a lot of the critique that gets lobbed at them is sort of unfair in that regard of like, you guys, they can't no one platform can serve everyone all the time. You wouldn't want them to, you know? It's part of what makes them special is that they're, you know, is that they have their approach. And so I really have always felt with my work that I wanted to do limited editions, right, in addition to single editions, and gave a lot of thought about, well, what would distinguish my limited editions from my single editions? How would I approach that? I do have a background. For 10 years, photography was my primary medium, and really before I moved into video, I had experience working as a curator of fine art photography and learning how that market worked and editioning my own work as photographic prints. And so I think that has been like invaluable experience for me in translating now my work to NFTs, because it's the exact same thing, just with a different container technology. And so I decided in the late summer last year, the DeFi summer, to do limited editions, like editions of 10 of my early work, my early video work, that was sort of, you know, from my archive, early pieces that are very charming, but I think you can tell that they are different from what I was working with at that time currently. And doing them as limited editions of 10, selling them at 0.1 ETH each, which at that time was about $50. And of course, you know, at that point I had developed enough interest in my work that I'd put them up, they'd sell out in like minutes. And I just kind of kept going with that for a bit because it allowed me to expand my collector base. It allowed me to, at that time, make my work continue to be available to other artists, which has always been very important to me and is something I often recommend artists think about, that like it's actually good to have various entry points to collecting your work. Not everyone is a whale. Not everyone can afford those single editions. If your single editions suddenly become very valuable, there is a lot of benefit to making your work available at a price point that more collectors can afford. And those people will support you in ways that are valuable beyond just financially. So, you know, I think that was really also a huge catalyzing force in the interest in my work. It really expanded my collector base. It really expanded sort of the number of people who were engaging with my work. And of course, that's all before 2021, right? That's all before the big grand orgasmic moment of crypto art. You know, so I did my first drop on Nifty Gateway in January. It was before the Beeple sale. It was before, but it was like a test for me of like, you know, it's a new space for me. And I was just like blown away by, okay, this all sold out like immediately. You know, every time you do a release, it's a test of demand for your work. And which is why I'm always very thoughtful about what I mint, what I release, when and how. And yeah, I've been very fortunate since that time that it's just grown and grown and grown for me. And then I did this collection called the Cassandra Complex a little over a month ago on Blank Art, which is a new platform which allowed me to release the work on its own custom smart contract. And again, it was limited editions of my signature video painting style, this sort of figurative, funny, retro VHS style I work in. And it was a very personal collection because, you know, I don't need to tell you that like with this wave of interest in crypto art and NFTs came all this unwanted attention as well, which I really hadn't foreseen. And maybe it's because I lean a little into like, if not optimism, I lean into joy in my work and in my life. And I just hadn't foreseen how much anger what we're doing here would stir up in people. And yeah, there she is. And so I'd been chewing on this. I really love mythology and classics, and I'm a Jeopardy champion. So that definitely influences my work in the sense that like I have sort of a sponge brain, and just like there's a lot in there that I pull from. And I kept thinking about the story of Cassandra. You know, she was this princess of Troy. She was given the gift of prophecy by Apollo, but then he was pissed she wouldn't put out for him. So he cursed her then to never be believed. And it's, you know, in the 20th century got sort of reinterpreted into this psychological phenomenon, the curse of being someone who gets something early and everyone goes, you're wrong, you're crazy, we don't like it. And then by the time everyone realized that's the way of the world now, that early person has typically been punished or maligned or suffered. It's also the story of Horton Hears a Who. It's the exact same story of like, nobody believes that person who's early. Nobody believes the prophet, right? And the prophet is often punished. So I sort of translated these feelings I was having about the anger I saw coming up among artists, among, the fine art world, about NFTs and like, they're awful and it's bad art and all these things that people were saying. And I kind of just translated it into like, this is one of the oldest stories we have in society about how that cycle goes. That's the early part, the prophet getting, sort of terrorized and attacked for their prophecy. And then, the collection ends with, turns out she was right. But at that point, the people who criticized are gone and the person who made the prophecy has been punished. So everyone's rejoicing, not really realizing like there was suffering that occurred in birthing this new way. And I really wanted to take this kind of zoomed out lens on it because I do think it's a pattern that repeats itself in history. So this collection sold very well. It also sold, on the day of its launch. It had this beautiful single edition piece that was collected by Token Angels. And, it's definitely like a little feather in my cap. Like I really am very proud of this work. And that kind of takes me up to now. Yeah.
The story of what you just said is, it's, I actually didn't know this context. So thank you for sharing that. But it's really interesting because, a lot of people like compare what is happening now with, blockchain and art on the blockchain with, the internet back in the day, right? And like how everybody said, like the internet and like computers, it's just a fad. It will end.
That'll never take off. Yeah.
It will never take off. And it's true, like history does repeat itself. Like, and yeah, even though, I guess that initial wave of criticism has in a way calmed down a little bit for sure. But there is still, a lot of doubts and a lot of questions, rightly so in a way, that get asked about crypto art. Like how do you approach those topics, and what do you say to these doubts and these questions?
Yeah, I tell people that this is Pandora's box, right? To get mythological again. It's open already. The ideas are out. Cryptoart has been on CNN. It's been in the New York Times. It's been on the BBC. It's never going back in the box. It's never going away. NFTs are here to stay. It's such a revolutionary technology because it's such a simple technology at its essence. It's never going away. Will the market always be as hyped as it was this spring? No, it's going to rise and fall. I've been here for 2 years. I have seen this happen many times already. I have ridden this cycle several times already. So when I see people getting down or getting worked up because, the sales aren't happening the way they were a month ago, I go, yeah, this is strap in, folks, like buckle up. This is what you signed up for. You got to learn how to surf these waves and not get drowned under them. It's going to go up and down, just like the Ethereum price chart itself. And it's just also to say that I sort of lost my train of thought. But what else did I want to say about that? I don't know. I guess that it's right. It's that we are starting to see people take notice of it. It is so revolutionary. But yeah, that you can't always, you shouldn't want it to always be hyped. That's when it is. That dirty word of bubble comes up a lot. And that's why every time I've been asked about it, I try to gently steer people more towards the word boom, because we absolutely had a boom in NFTs and in crypto art. I mean, so many artists entering the space, collectors entering the space, institutions wanting to get into the space. That is, boom would be an accurate term. Bubble implies that this is going to burst and all these NFTs are going to be worthless. And I just don't really, not that I want to get too much in the realm of prophecy myself, but first off, I think prophecies are by nature self-fulfilling. So if we refer to it as a bubble, it's much more likely to be a bubble. I just also think that it's also this idea that it'll burst and then it'll all go away is like, it's just like the dot-com boom in the late 90s, right? When the dot-com boom did lead to a bit of a bubble and that bubble burst, it's not like, oh, well, no more internet. That was stupid. All those investors were so stupid that they invested in that bubble. It's like, no, you kind of need, it's ideal if it doesn't become so egregious. That's why I think a lot of investors in this space sort of offer the wisdom when prices go down or when the market cools off, it's good. That's what we call a healthy correction. You actually want that to happen to keep it at a place of healthy growth so that it isn't becoming something that is an egregious bubble that could hurt a lot of people when it bursts. Yeah, I think that's sort of my thinking on that. Oh, and this is what I wanted to say. To the critique of it, a lot of the critique, around the ecological aspects, or I hear a lot about inequality, or it's just perpetuating the ills of the traditional art world. I think this is a tendency we have in society where when something new comes around, everyone goes, shit, I'm terrified. Like, it's threatening to change the way we do things, and I'm comfortable with the way we do things. And if you come around and tell me suddenly there's a new way and there are these people who figured it out already, and I'm hearing about it and going, but I don't know about it. It makes me feel out of touch. It makes me feel like obsolete. It makes me feel scared about my utility in this new future. That's what the Cassandra Complex was about. That, like, it's very natural for all people, if you are late to the party, to feel scared when you find out about things changing. And my sort of counter to that fear, because it does often manifest as misdirected anger, especially at artists. That was what was very disheartening for me this winter, was how many artists were getting attacked, myself included, by this misdirected anger based on misinformation around how blockchain works. And I think it's just misguided to place individual moral imperatives on people for something that is a systemic issue. So you should never just be like bullying someone because there are problems in the world. We're all part of that system. And it's also to say, well, what we're trying to do here is build a future technology out of the system and resources we have available to us today. Our system is imperfect today. So of course, this new system we're building is going to have all the same flaws and faults and problems as what we currently have. But I think it is a logical fallacy to then go, hey, that new system, it has inequality, it has ecological concerns, shut it all down, it's bad. When it's like, all the problems with it are just extensions of the problems we already have in society. So maybe let's allow it to figure itself out, and maybe trust that the people engaging in it on a daily basis are vested in making it better. That's why we're doing this. We're trying to solve for those problems. So to be attacked for being part of the system everyone is a part of, when you're one of the people kind of working with pushing things forward in a new way, it can be very demoralizing and it can be very frustrating. And artists are by nature incredibly sensitive people. So I guess that's what like hurt the most out of all of that, was how much artists were shouldering this anger that really was coming from fear. And because we are sensitive, because we are a vulnerable group of people, that we were targeted for it. And it's, again, that's what I transmuted it into my collection, the Cassandra Complex, because that's what I can contribute, is transmuting these experiences into art that maybe help everyone process and help everyone deal in a way with joy and with humor and with going, damn, this was really dark in certain ways. And is there a way we can maybe find light out of it?
Yeah, that's it's interesting because there's I definitely agree with the fact that whenever human nature, whatever they don't know, they tend to be either scared or attack. It's kind of like as animals, like you either attack or you just walk away.
It's survival.
It's survival. So I think, there's a big piece around like education, which, I always stress this, but it's like, it's so important to, have voices, to people like you, people like, artists that can really speak for the movement, right? And that, have been around for a while, that have seen the various, even the various fluctuations of the market up and down, as it should, and as it will continue to go up and down, because it is called crypto art because it's based on cryptocurrency, so naturally it will follow the flow of that market too.
Totally.
So yeah, I agree, and I think there's still a huge educational gap, that has to be kind of fulfilled.
Definitely.
And so, yeah, absolutely. And voices like you and many others, are so important. Like, it's what kind of helps to educate, like, people like myself and people like others that are coming in and seeing, okay, this is what it's about, like, this is why it started, this is the technology behind it, etc., etc. Yeah, absolutely. I wanted to shift gears a little bit and actually speak about your artwork and your pieces, and I think it's really interesting. Like, I've pulled up your super rare profile, and it's kind of cool to go through like the timeline from the first kind of minted pieces up to the most recent ones. So maybe we can talk a little bit about that, if you're down for it.
Gladly. This is actually my collection you're looking at.
Sorry.
It's okay. I'm an adamant collector, and I've been being early to this space has made me very lucky to get a lot of incredible work on super rare in my collection. But yes, here is my art. Yeah.
So I wanted to start with the very first piece that you were talking about at the start, which is this one, right? The one that you mentioned, that it was the first one that you tokenized. Okay.
Yeah.
And I'd like to ask you a little bit, like, how has your, I guess, the medium, like the blockchain and like crypto art in itself, has it altered or changed the way that you have like created and produced art?
Yeah, it's funny. I get asked that a lot, and the answer is yes and no. Again, I have been a creative professionally since I was a teenager, really. So I'm called to do this because I just have a very strong like channel of vision inside me, and I am compelled to create, right? Like, I've just always been that way. And so the things I create, I really do see them as like channelings almost. There is this almost mystical component to it for me, that I really can just open myself up when I'm creating and let things come through. So that's to say that I think I have really retained my vision very strongly, in a sort of uncompromised way. And what I mean by that is, you will find, I think I did one piece that was like an Ethereum piece early on, because I was sort of like, especially in my first year of doing crypto art, I was I didn't know I have such a wide breadth of styles that I work with, that I really had to I was testing things out, right? I was testing out like what styles of mine are going to be received and how are they going to be received. But for the most part, and I certainly, like, there's tons of art out there that does deal with cryptocurrency topics that I think is wonderful. I just personally, like I said, like, I'm an artist first and a crypto person second. So I made the decision pretty early on that, like, I am doing this as an organic evolution of my art practice. And I want to continue working with the themes and concepts and leitmotifs that I was already working with, and, and develop them and deepen them just naturally, the way I do in my practice. Only now I have this additional component of saleability. I have this additional component of being able to release things as editions and develop a collector base. So that's to say that, right, I have not catered my work to cryptocurrency themes. I have not catered my work in any sort of like hyper intentional way to the crypto space. However, the part of that is yes, is I'm also a very intuitive person, and I am always in conversation with my market, in conversation with my collectors. All of my experience impacts my creation. Of course, to me, that's just the type of artist I am. I'm a highly sensitive person. Everything I experience in a sensory manner feeds into what I create. So it's to say that, no, I can't point to any kind of like really specific way in which I have catered to the crypto space, but I have become so interested in and intrigued by cryptocurrency and this space and how it relates to a concept I have been chewing on for the better part of a decade, which is the idea of the internet as sort of humanity's attempt to become a planetary civilization. There's this transhumanist physicist named Michio Kaku who did this series of videos truly like 10 years ago that are kind of these like roots for me in this theme I've been working with, which is this idea of, you know, the internet being this way we're attempting to coalesce into a mass organism. And we're experiencing the push and pull right now of 50% of the population wants to regress. 50% of people are like, fuck the future. We want things to be the way they used to be, and we want to protect that. And 50% of the population is like, we're ready for it. Let's go. Like Team Earth. Let's be connected. Let's come together. And the next 100 years, I think, are going to be sort of the most defining in human civilization in the history of humanity, because we're either going to figure it out. We're either going to like do it, become a planetary civilization, become a more unified global organism, or we're going to destroy ourselves or send ourselves back, you know, back to the dark ages. Because we now have all these future technologies like cryptocurrency, like weaponry, and God only knows what else. And it's a lot. The internet is a major, major privilege. It's a huge, fancy tool to be used by a species that, you know, not long ago were monkeys in trees. Like, we're wielding this like incredibly powerful tool that's scaring the shit out of us. And so it's to say that, you know, you'll notice visually a lot of my work works with like web-like structures and interconnectivity and spectrums, like, you know, the rainbow. As I always, as a child, would upset people because they'd go, "What's your favorite color?" And I'd say rainbow. Like I've been obsessed. I was obsessed with Rainbow Bright as a child. Yeah, like I went as Rainbow Bright for Halloween for years until finally, like, the costume was just like, you know, way too small on me. And rainbows are just like, you know, I know a lot of people in this space like rainbows, and it's one of the things I see people make fun of when they make fun of crypto art is like, oh, we get it, rainbows. But it's like, no, man, rainbows are deep for me. Like, rainbows are, again, it's just a way of visually representing the holistic, like, wholeness of thing. It is all the colors. It is all the colors in harmony, in synthesis. And yeah, I'd say that is something that really weaves into all of my work, and of course then connects to what we're doing here with cryptocurrency. Is this way in which we are making the idea of currency, you know, an invention that came about in the Middle Ages, the idea of currency, we're now finally updating it for a civilization that has the internet. Like, we are very different than the civilization that existed in, you know, the year 1200. So it makes sense that we are, you know, updating how currency works for this new future.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, like, looking, I think we have a couple of comments just to let you know. So Joanny Lemercier is saying, wow, I like these early pieces. I think Museum of Crypto is, you know, saying hello. And but yeah, like, you know, there's like it's like a combination of like color, pixel, video art, like kind of glitching, like it's everything, mixed together, and it's yeah, I love these early pieces. They're super cool, and really, like, I think, we spoke about this last week with Robness as well, but it's like, it's kind of like, it's nice to see like artists just, letting go and just releasing their creativity with like no boundaries, right? And just, doing what it feels good. And I get that feeling in seeing, all of this like explosion of color, and like, even I was looking at this series. Oh, it goes back to it. But like, even these like Moon Dance, like they're series that depict you as well, which is like super cool. I love that.
Thank you.
Let me just go back. Yeah, like these Trapped in a Box, like it's or this one, like Stairway to Paradise, like this is super funny. I love that.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, for me, like I said, I have a background in fine art, but I also almost intentionally, I've never, I did not study art academically. So I am very free with my practice. And I often say it's like art, for me, my art is created by my inner child, that creativity is this thing I think all children are in touch with. And then people kind of lose touch with it over the years. And I've been very fortunate to cultivate a life where I just am very in touch. I'm very in touch with that inner child and with that place of like excitement and wonder about the world. And it's why my work is, again, I work, I'd like to think you can see the through line with my work, definitely. And working so much with analog helps, aesthetically kind of tie things together. But even in my other pieces, I'd like to think there's this through line of themes and leitmotifs that emerge, while also, experimentation is just fundamental to my practice. I just am simply not someone who is going to sit and create the same thing over and over and over again. Though, of course, I have developed these series where I do, as my work has developed, and I do experiment and find a look, which I would say with my video paintings, that's a good example of like, I developed that style. I really started working with it in early 2016. Right there, you can see Astral Antenna was the first video painting I ever minted on the blockchain. And I think I minted it, I want to say it wasn't till early 2020. Like I said, my early work on Super Rare, I was really experimenting. I was really going, how about this? How about that? Like, I have a bunch of different styles I work in. And this, for me, the video painting style, to me, it was sort of one of my most precious in a way, because it's so honest. It's figurative work. A lot of my work really is more abstract and rhythmic, and it's sort of engaging in a different, more zoomed out way. And with these video paintings, it's pure figurative work. It's graphic, and it's really me getting these ideas I'm always chewing on and cooking up in my head, and just like letting them out in the way that I can. And, that I started working with this vintage video painter in 2016, and with my own, and then pairing it with digital animation that I design, and pairing it with analog processing. And over the years, I really did develop a technique that now I can sit and I can create these things and have such flow with them, because there is this like really intense level of channeling of an idea that has to happen to make a figurative work like this on a device that, like, people might not realize, this device is old. It does not save. The second I turn it off, this image is lost forever. So each of these video paintings is sort of like improbable and rare in this way, where it only exists because I was able to capture it on videotape in the moment in which I created it. And so many things have to come together to make these and make them look the way I want them to look. I have so many experiments of these that sort of didn't turn out the way I wanted them and haven't seen the light of day. And that's how I have come to have this style, right? And that's the work I'm offering at Sotheby's is one of these video paintings. It's this signature style, but for the first time ever, I'm also pairing it with analog video feedback. So it has this kind of infinite, trippy spirality to it that is this other technique I work with in a lot of my work. And I fused them together, which again is just a moment of experimentation of going, is there a way I can pair these two strains of my work to create something new? And I'd like to think that's what you find when you go through my work like this, that you can really see like my progression in studio and my progression with concepts I'm working with and how I am tweaking them and noodling with them and then leading myself down a different path. So yeah, play. It's all about play for me. And I often say, like, you have to cultivate the inner babysitter in you that will take care of the inner child. Because if you're not taking care of your business, if you're not answering emails and standing up for yourself and advocating for yourself like a fucking grown up, there's no way your inner child is going to feel safe to make free, playful art like this. It's actually an indication of what a grown-up I am in a certain way, that I am able to also be such a child.
And it's, there's like, as you were talking, like, I feel like there's also a real percentage of improvisation there. Like, obviously, like, even when you're talking about, your video artwork, like, it's like that moment that you need to capture, which it's so thought of, but at the same time it's like, okay, it's that one, like, it's improvised, it's done. So that's super interesting as well. Like that improvisation piece, I think adds in a way, adds even more color to the endless color that there is.
I've never thought about it, but I think it might come from the fact that, like I said, for 10 years, I was primarily a photographer, and I was a street photographer, right? Like, I didn't do very much studio work. I was always shooting things I saw in the world. And there's, this concept from Henri Cartier-Bresson, one of the great street photographers, of the decisive moment. The difference between an image that like grabs you and is monumental and impactful. Like, think of the image of the sailor kissing the woman on V-Day, in Times Square. It's like, that image, and some photographer was standing there and captured that moment. There's some debate about whether that's an authentic moment, but I digress. That, like, assuming that were an authentic moment captured by a photographer who happened to be standing there, it's why the second you see that image, you're like, oh, I feel the impact of, oh my God, they captured this moment on camera. And if this photographer had been standing 1 foot over and had gotten there 3 seconds later, this photograph never would have occurred. And that is very much an influential ethos in my early work as a photographer. Mm-hmm. And I've truly, in this moment, you saying that, I've synthesized that is one of the things I have carried over from my early photography work into what I do with video, where there's a lot of planning and preparation that goes into these pieces, especially because a lot of it does begin as digital animation. So I'm creating it digitally the way a lot of artists do, using Creative Suite or Cinema 4D or whatever, various programs. I can plan plenty. And like this piece we're looking at now, Wobble Wave, that's in the permanent collection of MOCA, is a perfect example of this, right? Like that this was a digital animation I had pre-prepared. It's sort of a sister piece to another piece of mine called Fountain of Calm. It's this style of undulating waveforms I was working with. And I had the piece prepared, but once I bring it into my analog system, which I often refer to as my video altar, because I have bedecked my TV in like gems and like baubles, and like it's very like I have it all set up to be my witch station. Because the second I sit down there, I have all these little devices and all these things, vintage gear that I've amassed over the years, and the way I've connected it all. And I've developed this symbiosis with these devices, right? I've developed this like deep, deep understanding of what each little knob does. And once I'm sitting there, this preparation, this intention I bring to it, it then blossoms and mutates and transforms based on whatever I'm feeling in that moment. It's affected by the quality of the light in my studio, you know, like all these things, because I'm working with camcorders pointed at TVs and knobs and buttons and messing with my signal and all these various very physical ways of manipulating the media, similar to that decisive moment in photography, depending on my emotional state or my, you know, whatever I'm working with at that time, it affects things. And this piece I created in mid-March of last year. It began as this very clean, undulating waveform. And when I sat to work with it, you know, we were about a week away from going into lockdown here in Los Angeles. And I was already pretty freaked out. I was already like, I don't think I want to go out to eat for dinner tonight. I think there's a disease on the loose that they're like not maybe telling us about the full picture. And yeah, I ended up just manipulating it in this way to just, I was like, I got to make this less clean because things do not feel neat and clean right now. Things feel wobbly. And yeah, I think I looked it up. I minted this piece on March 20th of last year. It was the first solo MP4 I had ever minted. It was right after a piece that I released called Glitch Slapped, which I have yet to be disproven in this. So I'll take the credit for Glitch Slapped is the first narrative short film ever tokenized on the blockchain. It's a collaboration between myself and my wife, Bronwyn Lundberg. And it was my actual first MP4 ever tokenized, but it was a collaborative piece. So Wobble Wave is my first solo MP4, which, you know, in those early days, I don't think we could even work with it for a long time. We couldn't use MP4s. So all my early work was GIF. I have long worked with GIF because I design a good portion of my work is designed to loop. And that's how I've long worked since before my work with the blockchain. So it actually worked fine for me at the beginning that I could only mint GIFs. And to this day, I often still mint largely GIFs. But MP4, of course, has its value and has its charm. And with Wobble Wave, I really wanted to make sure I preserved the detail of like what I did with it, you know? So I kept it as an MP4.
Is it this one, the one that I was showing now?
Yes. Yeah. So Glitch Slapped, why I define it as the, you know, because obviously a lot of the works on, you know, that have been tokenized kind of lean into what you could call short film. But why I define it as the first short film on the blockchain is it has a narrative, like it has a beginning, a middle, and end. It has full sound production, you know, that there's a story. It's not a tableau, it's a story. And it's, again, as everyone knows, you can only upload 50 megabytes onto Super Rare. So I believe it's like 48 seconds long, and it is also designed to loop. So I think that's why we were sort of the first to do that, is because just the parameters of how small the upload size is did not lend itself to people wanting to put their, you know, high def 4K film on the blockchain. Yeah,
this is awesome. It's really awesome. And I love how you put in, you know, like there is a style to your pieces, which kind of, you know, and it comes out here as well. It's like the rainbow is really, you know, you can see it like even in the bug that is flying, like there's like this this rainbow, this colorful aspect to your pieces, which it's awesome. This one is a great one.
Yeah, it's special, and it's right when the great history of crypto art is written. It's why there's so much in this space that it's like, you know, you don't want to go too far and be too hype yourself too much. But I'm also aware that, like, you kind of have to take what's yours. You kind of have to tell like you said, 100%. Education. It's about education. So it's why when this comes up, I do tell people, yeah, this is the first narrative short film ever tokenized on the blockchain. And because I think my guess is that we're going to see we're going to see NFTs really play into filmmaking and play into that realm of entertainment. And I do work as a writer in Hollywood, so I have one foot in that industry, and I guess it's kind of why I can see that, even though I think it might take a little while, it might take a few years. Again, because we're still in such a nascent era of this technology. Like 50 megabytes, again, like I said, is not big enough to upload a film. So it was us working with our own sort of scrappiness and our own approach to how we could do a short film in that parameter that allowed us to do that at that early juncture.
Absolutely. And talking about, also you mentioned like crypto art history and making sure that like stories are told. Like obviously, you're part of the permanent collection of MOCA, like Colburn is, and the Museum of Crypto Art are, putting up, I guess, the first kind of real like institution in this space, an actual museum which tells a story about crypto art, which is great. And I've shared this before, but I think it's probably it was so needed at this moment in time to do that. And yeah, like I'd love for you to like speak a little bit about that. And also I know that we can give a little leak with permission of the Museum of Crypto Art and Colburn and the team that you're going to be part of the Artist Council. So yeah, like share a little bit about that and your thoughts on that. I think would be amazing.
Yeah, I mean, Museum of Crypto Art has been such a huge part of this space for so long that I think it's, like I was saying, there's so much about all of what we're doing here that's self-electing, right? And I think it's what is hard for some people to grasp about it, that it's like it's up to you to elevate yourself to that post, and we needed this. So I think it's wonderful that that they have amassed such a monumental collection, and they've made announcements about how they are planning to sort of transition moving forward and how they intend to use this token, this MOCA token, as a means of determining future acquisitions. I'm thrilled about it. There's so much in the space. Again, that self-electing nature. It cuts both ways, right? It's like, it's so wonderful to see a group of people and an institution that, to me, feels like they have the right idea and that they're leaning into elevating the culture of this space. We're always kind of navigating that this is this interesting confluence of technology and art and finance, and all of those aspects need each other, right? They're all necessary. The financial aspect is a necessary part of this support that artists are being provided with for the first time in their lives. Digital artists is culture shaking, right? Like, it is completely changing the social hierarchy as we know it. And that is why people are getting very like worked up around, whoa, artists are suddenly like in a different place in society now. As I always point out to people, you should want that. Societies that are artist led tend to be healthier, happier societies, because the role of the artist in society is to shine a light for everyone. It's to like help lead us into the darkness. The artists are the people unafraid to go stand at the edge of the abyss and gaze into it. And if we culturally and financially support them in doing that, we all benefit. Societies where artists are downtrodden and not empowered are unhappy, authoritarian societies. So I think that what they're doing here it's a really great way of synthesizing the sort of financial aspects of this space in a way that's going to speak to collectors, it's going to speak to the people who are engaging with this space from a more financial perspective, while ultimately being in service of supporting artists and being in service of creating a long-term archival approach to the work we're doing here. That is one of the biggest critiques that I hear. I'm always, again, I've long been an artist. I'm very attuned to the art world, the art press, new media art spaces, and what they're saying. And like I said, I was very shocked that there was so much sort of anger and resistance that came, especially from like new media people, with the emergence of NFTs. And the biggest critique is, well, what about the archival quality? Well, what, it's just a URL, and what if the URL goes down? What if the link gets broken? And my answer to that has always been, then let's make sure it doesn't get broken. Like, let's not let the Library of Alexandria burn down again. You know, that let's make sure we have organizations and institutions, institutional support that we are putting towards maintaining the archival quality of these pieces we are putting on the blockchain, so that they are still existing 100, 1,000 years from now. Again, it comes back to that thing where I go, criticizing something because it has the same problems as, you know, traditional media, criticizing this new media because it has the same problems as traditional media, doesn't really say that the new media is bad. It's actually that thing where I go, you're right. Let's make sure that doesn't happen. And institutions like the Museum of Cryptoart are having that conversation and are leading that conversation moving forward of going, what are we all doing here, right? Like, was this just something some people wanted to do to make some quick money in April of 2021? Or is this a brand new way of approaching screen-based art and new media art and the aesthetics of the internet, the greatest cultural advancement that has happened probably ever? You know, is that something we value long-term and that we want to put effort toward preserving long-term? I think the answer is yes. And that's why I'm excited to be involved with them on the Artist Council and to be part of that discussion.
I think you explained it so well. Really, like, you know, you really spoke about, I think, you know, and I don't want to, you know, speak for the Museum of Crypto Art, but to me, you definitely, you know, explained really like what it means for what they're doing. And it is important to have that intersection, and for artists as well to realize that it is an intersection of tech, art, and finance. And the finance part is essential for artists to have a basis. And the fact that like the Museum of Crypto Art are, you know, also introducing the concept of DeFi in the artist's mind and vocabulary is really, like, as you were saying, like empowering artists and the whole creative community to move forward and to really make this like a real revolution. Like from an art perspective, I think, you know, we're already there. In many ways, you know, like your Sotheby's upcoming auction tomorrow is a great example of that. But now there's like a whole piece of making sure that these creatives, these artists are also supported from a technology perspective. So, you know, archives, making sure that these NFTs are safe and are not, you know, disappearing and are, you know, practically on the blockchain, and also, you know, financially as well.
Yeah. I think that what I would say to all artists and to all people in this space is pay attention to the people who are educating artists about finance, pay attention to the people who are educating artists about technology, and maybe just don't listen to the voices that are saying artists shouldn't talk about money, and and isn't it gross that artists just go online and chill and perform. Those people are trying to protect their interests. You know, those are, and I can't blame them for doing that. Everyone is trying to protect their own interests. But I think that that's a lot of what we hear right now in the noise. And it's something I would like to see less of, is this critique of artists for doing what they need to do to find the support to make their life and their practice work. Making NFTs or participating in the space in a way that's critical to the point of shaming artists out of feeling like it's okay for them to do what they need to do to find that support. I just find that an unhelpful addition. And it's something that I would ask people, if that is what they're bringing to this space, I would ask them to kindly reconsider it, to kindly reconsider from a societal perspective why it is good for artists to learn about money. We have historically, as a group of people, been told, no, you're bad. You're bad if you talk about money. You're supposed to let the gallerists do that. You're supposed to let other people do that on your behalf. Don't you worry your pretty little head about it. And that is something that keeps artists disempowered. So again, I mean, what you're saying, I'm just responding to that I just, groups like Museum of Cryptoart really have the right fusion of all of those elements, right? That it is good for artists to learn about DeFi. These are ways in which artists and marginalized groups of people can lift themselves up and finally find a place for themselves in a hierarchy that has often put them at the bottom. So that's what I hope we see more of. And I think it's fantastic that the Museum of Cryptoart is leading the way.
And I think it's fantastic that you're part of the Artist Council. Like, what better, what better representative than somebody like you? So that's amazing.
Thanks. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much, Sarah. I think it's been great to speak. Best of luck tomorrow.
Thank you.
And congratulations, and thanks a lot for the chat.
Yes, thanks for chatting with me and listening to all my dreams and schemes.
Thank you. Cheers.
All right.
See
bye.
you.